I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to the second of three League of Women Voter Forums to talk with the candidates. I'm Jan Cartwright. I am a former League president and a League member for probably 15 years. I really want to tell you a little bit about what the League does and does not do. We do not support candidates. We do sometimes support issues, but we do our work the hardest to be nonpartisan and not support any political party. Our big goal is that we want everybody to vote so that our elected officials represent our entire community. We are a voice for all, working to connect people directly with government. We provide and work from facts. We educate and we advocate for change. Tonight's forum is the second of three, as I said. Last night we featured legislative candidates. Tonight we are focused on the City Council and County Commissioner candidates. Tomorrow night at 5:30 we will host all 10 candidates for Laramie County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees. All candidates have also been offered the opportunity to post their written answers on our State League website, and it's posted up there on the screen. A reminder to candidates, your answers are due to Sue Risky by this Friday, October 3rd, if you want to be part of the publication, and you have her email address. The recording of all the forums should be posted early next week on that same website. And we are also pleased to announce that voters will be able to hear most candidates for governor and superintendent on Thursday, October 23rd at 5:30 here in the Commission chambers. But back to the work at hand. The important work of the City Council will be discussed now, and I want to thank the four candidates for being here. And it is my very good pleasure to introduce the moderator tonight, Raylyn Jobe, who is a former Wyoming State Senator from Fremont County, or from Sweetwater County, who moved to Cheyenne in 2006. She advocated for local government projects at the city and county level during her 12 years in the Senate. She is currently the Vice President of the John P. L. Bogan Foundation, whose mission it is to create or cause change, primarily for the benefit of the people of the state of Wyoming through the support of science, education, and charity. So without further ado, here's Raylyn.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us tonight. I think it's very nice of you and very aware of the voters, knowing that they need to hear from you tonight. Everybody who's running for City Council has been invited tonight, and we're very pleased that you are here. To give you an overview of what's to come, each of you will have 2 minutes to introduce yourself and explain to the audience why you are running for a seat on the City Council. Then we will ask you a series of questions which the League has developed. You will have 1.5 minutes to answer each of those questions. If you feel compelled to, we will give you a 30-second rebuttal on any of the questions. As time allows, we will take some questions from the audience, and you will have 1.5 minutes to answer those questions, and we do have a timer with us tonight. And finally, you will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Please remember that this forum is streamed live tonight. The League of Women Voters is also preparing the Voter's Guide with all the answers from you to the questions we're asking tonight, and those will be published and available on October 6th. We'd like to thank the county commissioners and the other county officials who have made this very nice facility available to us tonight. With that, we'll launch into the questions. Are you all ready?
Ready as we're going to be.
Okay. We'll start with your opening statements. Again, you have 2 minutes for this to introduce yourself and explain why you're running. And Mr. Roybal, would you lead us off tonight, please?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Scott Roybal, and I'm running for a seat on the City Council, Cheyenne City Council, Ward 1. So I attended the University of Wyoming for 3 years and left to pursue my passion of business ownership. I earned my knowledge to be successful both professionally and personally in the arena of the do-it experience. I have the know-how and the proven experience to do the job of city councilman, which has been proven by my prior position on the council from the years of 1998 to 2002. And at that time, I also held the position of vice president and president of the council. If I earn the approval of the people to be elected again, I will continue my policy I initiated in my premier tenure to maintain an open door policy to create dialogue with the people of my ward and the people of Cheyenne. It is my privilege or my principle to keep an open rapport, whether it be informal or in an informal or formal setting. I want to stay easily approachable in order to understand the needs, the concerns, and anticipate the needs and concerns of the people of Cheyenne. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Thank you for having me here today, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this debate. My name is Sean Allen. I am running for re-election for Ward 1. I've served the past 4 years, and while we've accomplished some great things, I think we have some work still to be done. I'm proud to have set an example for my children in how to listen to other people, how to find agreements, and still bring what one has to offer to the table. And speaking of the table, I think they'll be probably pretty happy to hear that there's 4 more years of political debate at the kitchen table if I'm reelected. Over the past 4 years, I've worked on many things, but some primary issues that I've focused on have been bringing more transparency, council involvement, and balance to our budget, making the regulatory environment more user-friendly, particularly for small business, and long-term projects such as railroad quiet zones, the West Edge project, and encouraging development in the downtown area. I hope to have the people of Ward 1's vote to continue working hard for them and for the city of Cheyenne. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Hi, I'm Richard Johnson, and unfortunately I'm not going to sound as professional as the 2 gentlemen to my right, or most likely the gentleman to my left. So, I have my family here represented, but I have no children of my own, so I have to rely on people at the tattoo shop, people at the skate park, probably known felons for most of my political advice. I know that may not warm me to a lot of hearts of the voters, but unfortunately, that's the way society is. I do know some very upstanding people in the community, as well as the dregs of society. And I have to basically say that anytime I stammer during this interview, it's all dedicated to Chris Haley at Crimson Sky Tattoo. I told him I would do my best not to stammer during my debate, but I'm nervous. This is my first time doing this, so it's just naturally going to happen. As far as what I've done for this community, I was one of the key components in the development and the fundraising of the Cheyenne Skate Park, which came to fruition in 2007. At that time, when I was at the zenith of when I should be most proud of myself for my accomplishment, my dad pulled me aside after I had to give a speech there and told me, yeah, you do a great job on the outside, why don't you try it from the inside? So after I moved into Sun Valley after my divorce, I established my 2 years residency there, so I was actually able to run for Ward 3, even though I've been a resident of Cheyenne since 1995 when I moved back from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Seaton?
My name is Jim Seaton. I've lived in Cheyenne since my father was stationed here with the Air Force out at Warren Air Force Base. I served in the Marine Corps 6 years, active duty. Half of that time I was with the Special Operations Command down in MacDill Air Force Base, and that's when I got my first introduction to the Middle East. Got out, came back to Cheyenne. I've owned a business here in Cheyenne. I worked for the state of Wyoming at WYDOT for almost 10 years, where I served as a reserve deputy sheriff here with sheriff and the sheriff's department. After about 10 years, almost 10 years at WYDOT, I decided that I wanted to do something else, and I became an independent contractor and went to Iraq. And I spent 53 months in Iraq working for various organizations, primarily the Army Corps of Engineers on the reconstruction projects in Iraq and security. Was medevaced in October of 2009. I broke my back and crushed the discs on my neck, so I had to come home, and been home doing that ever since. And like the other candidates that are up here, I just want to come out and be a voice for and a conduit for the people in my ward. Seems like I talk to a lot of people on an individual basis, and they have ideas, and they wonder why things are being done this way with the city or that way. And you always ask them, well, have you contacted your representative? And most of the time they say no, because they feel like they're alienated and they're not, and the members that they our elected aren't approachable. And that's what I want to bring, if I'm elected, is a conduit for those constituents and give them a voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll start the questions now. Again, you have 1.5 minutes to answer these questions. And Mr. Allen, you'll be first up on this first question. What is or should be the relationship between the council members and the mayor?
Well, it's my opinion it should be one of constant communication and collaboration. We're working on that every day. This year I was instrumental in, with some other council people, in really pushing for monthly leadership meetings with the mayor and the president, the vice president, and the 2 committee heads. And we wanted to discuss our shared vision and goals, and I think that's been helpful, but I think there's a lot of work to be done. Ultimately, we're all a team, but there's a reason we have a legislative and an executive branch. And we might disagree from time to time, but I believe that it is our job as council people to be representative of the people in our ward and to bring ideas to the table and not just be passive. I think we should be an active member of the council. And sometimes we are going to have those disagreements, but the way to overcome that is through collaboration and communication.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson, you would be next. Do you want me to repeat the question, or are you good?
No,
with it?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
As far as my relationship with anybody, it has to, in this case, it has to be professional as well as respectful. That's the best that I can offer to deal with him as well as anybody that I come across. I really don't want to ruffle his feathers, even though I'm sure I have complete capability of doing that. That's just part of my personality trait. I'm an outspoken individual, and that when I went and put my name into the hat, I literally said that this was going to be an exercise in restraint to keep my mouth shut. So when it comes to that, I'm going to basically listen to him more than I'm going to try to speak. If my opinion is actually warranted and appreciated, then of course I will try to give an intellectual answer instead of just talking off the, basically like I'm doing now. So in that case, I know as far as professional and personal, the fact that him and I don't hang out at black metal shows, skateboard events, and or the tattoo shop, I know that we're probably not going to have too much of a personal communication, but it's going to definitely be professional. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Seaton?
Well, I agree. I think with our system of government, these are all elected positions, and the mayor's office has to communicate. From what I've seen in the newspaper, there doesn't seem to be a lot of communication between the mayor's office and the council, or the mayor doesn't accept what the council wants to put forth, and it has to be a conduit, as Mr. Johnson said, and some of the things that Mr. Allen said. I mean, I'm not entirely sure why that communication process breaks down between the council and the mayor's office when both are elected officials, and the conduit, the constituents, want to bring these issues forward and give their voice a chance to be heard, and the mayor's office doesn't seem like it's really open a lot of times to that communication process, and that's one of the things that I want to try and change. You have to have that open communication process, because they're not, either body is not the sole voice or the sole mechanism for passing laws and regulations that the city has to govern itself by.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Roybal?
I see the relationship akin to a CEO and a board of directors. The council is a place that they'll provide many different opinions, different minds as to what should be done on any given project. The council needs to be basically skeptical and provide tough feedback about the job that the mayor's doing. We need communication, but we also can't just rubber stamp everything that goes through. The council is as much a business partner to the mayor as it is about governance. And if the council is seen as only governance, second guessing, and control, then there won't be the full value of the relationship won't be realized. So we do need to keep an eye on what he's doing, but also help him along with it. And that'll be the communication portion of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any short rebuttal, 30 seconds for anybody? Okay, Mr. Johnson, you'll be first up on this question. Following elections, people who supported candidates who lost can feel disenfranchised. If you win your election, would you reach out to those who did not support you? Why or why not?
Yes, I would, and there's actually a reason why. Of the 1,176 people that voted for me in the primary, I bet only 176 people actually knew who I was. The remainder of them probably thought my name was hilarious or I was on the top of the ballot. So I have no idea who actually voted for me in the primary. So yeah, I have no choice but to support the people that were either for me or against me, because if they really don't come out and say it directly to my face, I voted for you come election day or I voted for you in the primary, I'm not going to know, so I have to treat them with the same respect whether they did or did not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Seaton?
I agree with quite a bit of that. You know, a lot of it is about name recognition in this town. There are very few opportunities unless you spend a lot of money for people to put a name with or a face with the name. But I agree. You have to treat everybody with dignity and respect. And I believe that that's what my parents taught me. That's what I've practiced my entire time in my professional life, working for the state, owning my own business, being a deputy sheriff here on the reserve program. And just because somebody didn't represent me in the election doesn't mean that their ideas and their opinions are any less valuable to accomplish the job. That's one of the things I think we need to really push forward is open communication and a transfer of ideas, because that's what the people of the city. If things get passed in the city and people don't understand how they get done, they read a little blurb in the paper or see it on Channel 5 News or whichever news station they follow, but they really don't have any idea of how those things got pushed through and passed and turned into regulations and laws that they have to follow. And yet they don't take the opportunity to come and talk to their elected officials, the people that are supposed to represent them. And that's what I want to continue to do. I respect anybody as long as you have a valid opinion. I'm not going to discredit it. I want to hear what it is, and then we get a consensus and we move forward and figure out the best way to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Roybal?
Well, you know, of course, there are going to be some folks that are disenfranchised. We all have our hardcore supporters. My mother, for instance. And I would hope that they can still come to me. Part of my campaign is being open door policy. I want you to come see me if you have a problem, a question, a concern. I'm there for you. And sometimes we see that doesn't happen. The nice thing about our city government is that we have two other councilmen in the same ward. So if you feel you can't come to me, you can always come to them, give them your ideas, your concerns, and they can pass it on. And if you don't feel that you can talk to them, we've got also 8 others total in the council. So there is a way, if you do feel disenfranchised, to get your ideas and concerns to us. But like I say, I've got an open door. I'd like to see you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Scott, are you sure about that? Your mom called me last week. And
We grew up right across the street from each other.
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Allen?
Well, the answer to the question is absolutely. You know, and when I took this office, when I was elected for office, one of the first things I did was meet with Ms. Case, who vacated the seat, to ask her if there was any unfinished business that she had or any ideas that she could share with me that I could move forward. And in the 4 years that I've been in office, I've talked with former council people. I've talked with people who have ran for office, ran for this seat, and not been successful. Ms. Nelson Schroll, Mr. Laburn, Greg Crisp is a good friend of mine. And as I've heard my opponent say he's had an open door policy a couple times, and I feel that I have a very open door policy. There's some people that are sitting in this room right now that have experienced that, and I think I've done a very good job of responding to people when they've given me a phone call or an email. But ultimately, what the issue is people being disenfranchised. And, you know, it's just because somebody has a different idea, they are still passionate people, especially the people who ran for office. They had a reason for running. They had like I said, a passion for running. And it behooves us to reach out to those people after the election and ask them what their ideas are, because they had something they wanted to bring to the table and they ran for office and they had supporters. And so I guess the answer is, yeah, absolutely, we should reach out to those people.
All right. Thank you. Any 30-second rebuttals? All right, we'll move on to the next question. Mr. Seaton, you'll be first up on this one. What do you feel is the most important issue facing the city of Cheyenne, and how would you address that?
Primarily, I think the most important issue for the city of Cheyenne, or any city, is how do you stimulate growth and maintain your community feelings. You know, we grew up in a western town. This was a western town. People are set with those ideals and values. So how do you stimulate growth to open up opportunities for our kids to have jobs and employment opportunities here, and not feel that they have to leave the state to make a living? I myself, I've been around the world, come back, live in Cheyenne because I have seen that there are a lot of other places in the world, and by far, Cheyenne I've found is the best place to live. I like the community here. I like the people. I like the way that we approach things in Cheyenne and how we continue to move forward with bringing businesses into Cheyenne. I also believe that the most important thing right now is to get a better handle on our infrastructure, and that we have a solid plan on these on how we're going to address the expansion and bring these businesses into Cheyenne, and so that we have the proper infrastructure to support those businesses when they come here. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of things that we need more bars or things to influence our kids to stay here. I think there's plenty of opportunity and things for them to do now. So,
all right. Thank you. Mr. Roybal?
Okay. I'm thinking growth, development, and expansion. The building up and out of the city. We're experiencing an increase in population now because of oil, gas, and basically technology boom. And we need to help developers and builders get the permits and the inspections needed to get good quality projects, both residential and commercial, up and off the ground. We need to take advantage of this boom, if you will, to help with our tax base and to help pay for needed infrastructure to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen?
Well, I can't say that either of the two previous speakers are wrong. I think that's exactly what the most important issue we have is making sure that we're not missing out on any growth opportunities. We're at a crossroads right now, and we're really seeing a lot of development, but we've missed out on some opportunities because the city has not always been seen as being the most business-friendly government entity. I think we've lost out to some things in the county. We need to make sure that all the laws that we have are followed, but we need to make sure that we're pro-growth and we seize the opportunity that's before us with the mineral and oil development, the Swan Ranch development, which is there's explosive growth going on out there right now, industrial park, data centers, et cetera. But that's probably the most important thing, is to make sure that we're just not missing out on the things that are available to us.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Well, I hate to sound cliche, but unfortunately I agree with all three of them. One thing I have to state is my friend Matt actually came to support me today, and he just opened up his own business. It's a little shop of shred on 18th and Warren. He has a skateboard shop there. Granted, not everybody in this room is going to purchase skateboards, but if you guys do want some shoes, you can stop by and definitely pay him a visit. And, you know, I'm not just all for big business. You know, you hear all the stories about Microsoft, and you hear about Budweiser, and you hear about all these other things that are coming where they're all big business. I'd like to focus on that, but as they've said before, I'd like to focus more on small business as well. You know, what could have made it easier for Matt to get off his feet, you know, make his business a little more successful. That when I went and met with Dale at the Greater Cheyenne Chamber of Commerce, that's one of the things I asked him. You know, it's like, it seems by your website you focus on a lot more big business. You know, what do you do for the small guys? You know, that's one of the things I'd like to focus on. Bring the big guys in, but they're going to need some of the small-time restaurants and local-owned businesses as well, just to make everything balance out.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Roybal, you're first up on this next question, and I'm going to take this one a little out of sequence. Should there be a code of ethics for public employees, including city employees, to include guidelines for declaring a conflict of interest when their actions could directly benefit themselves or their immediate family?
You know, we have hundreds of hardworking people working for the city. I think there's 535, if I remember right. And they do an excellent job every day. But as you know, there's always a few bad apples in the bunch. If I remember right, there is a code of ethics in the employee handbook. But I think that with things like this, if the code of ethics isn't spelled out enough, then we should go ahead and rewrite it or add enough to it that it's explicit. But I think again, somebody taking, I hesitate to say the word bribes, but, taking things that are above and beyond what they should be, we should deal with that can and should deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Allen?
Well, I would say absolutely. This is something I'm very passionate about, particularly in light of the situation that's happening now in the city of Casper on their city council. We originally had met with the mayor earlier this summer about this same particular issue, and we wanted to strengthen our code of ethics not only for our employees but also for our elected officials. There's no reason that we shouldn't be held to the same standard. There was some controversy, I think, this summer because there was some misunderstanding that we were trying to just support what the mayor was already doing, which was updating our ethics policy, which, as Mr. Royal stated, is correct. We do have a code of ethics in the personnel policy. But, the time to build a fire station is not after a lot of houses burn down. The state has a code of ethics in their personnel policy, but they also have a code of ethics in the state statute that deals with specific things. I don't necessarily think that there's any widespread issue of employees accepting gifts or retaliation, but as Mr. Roble stated, those things have the opportunity to exist. And I do think that, much like in the state, we should have something that is spelled out in our law, in our ordinance, in our city ordinance, that says what is right and what is wrong and what you will be punished for. And I think that's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
When I read that, it had been put to the mayor's office in regards to updating the city handbook, I thought that was the right decision. I didn't really, coming from my past, I've been underestimated since I was, elementary school. And of course, usually when I start talking, people realize, oh, he has a brain, because look at the way I dress. I wore a Horta Draugr shirt to show I supported local music as well as voter apathy. I came out here being myself. That right away doesn't speak too fondly of me. So when individuals, city employees are getting accused, of saying, did you take this bribe? Well, what comes down to the bribe? Was it somebody delivered flowers? It's not like, they delivered gold bullion under the desk or anything for these individuals, but is it something as simple as, were people treated at dinner that weren't supposed to be done? So I really thought the idea of the mayor revising the handbook was probably the best avenue to approach on this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Seaton?
I absolutely believe that we have a code of ethics and that the public employees should sign and pledge to that. I mean, every job I've worked, especially with the federal government, we've always had a code of ethics and a policy of what you can and can't do and how it can be misinterpreted if you go to dinner with this contractor or that contractor. I don't see a lot of that in Cheyenne, but you hear a lot of it. A lot of people say, oh, well, you're not getting anything done if you don't know so-and-so or get this done. I don't see a lot of that going on in Cheyenne. I think the best way that our employees do their job is the fact that they have character and integrity. And I don't see a lot of that going on. And until you do something that's going to make me or show me that you don't have the character and the integrity to do your job without getting some type of additional benefit, then I'm going to trust you at face value. And I think if there is a conflict of interest, that you should declare that and you should remove yourself from that kind of project, because perception is reality anymore, especially as we see going on with the federal government. And it's disconcerting when people have the opportunity to do the right thing and just say, hey, I know this person, and I've got to excuse myself or retract or redact myself from this project because there might be a conflict. That's the professional thing to do, and it shows the amount of character and integrity that that person has to excuse themselves. So I do believe in that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask one more question for the minute and a half, and then we'll go to some audience questions if we have them. And if we don't, I might ask another question, but we're one question or two away from going to your closing statements. Mr. Allen, I think you're first up on this one. How can the City Council make streets safer for pedestrians and bicyclists?
Well, I think the answer is education, awareness, and planning. And I think we've made a lot of great strides in this particular issue in the time that I've been on council. Safe multimodal streets is an important part of a modern community. But we do need to have some common sense. Our community is not bike-friendly year-round. And so I think our plan has to take that into account. But there's a lot of people out there that say, I don't know why we should even have to accommodate the bicycle or pedestrian use. There are people who do ride their bicycles, and we want to accommodate them. They're citizens also. But ultimately, I think, as I said, education, awareness, and good planning is what will provide a safer street for pedestrians and for bicyclists.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Well, since I was, so involved in the Cheyenne Skate Park, obviously that is named after Clay Sturman, who happened to be a bicyclist. So when it comes to this, it was, so cut and dry. It was like, do I infringe on individuals' parking lots for private business? I'm going to definitely see more traffic coming into the parking lot than I'm going to see bicyclists going down, say, Logan Avenue, like Perry had brought up when he was, with James and I. So when I posed the question that you guys had sent to me onto my Facebook page for, pretty much I called them out in a straightforward manner saying, all right, if they put bicycle lanes in the neighborhoods, people are going to have to park a block and a half away that may not have driveways and or alley garage access. You have to take, handicap individuals that may not be able to walk that block and a half to get there. Same thing with Logan Avenue. Putting bike lanes, extending it, infringed on parking lots and things of that nature. So when I posed the question on my Facebook page, somebody actually wrote me back and said, well, one idea might be to check out what Lincoln, Nebraska or Madison, Wisconsin did, where instead of actually putting bicycle lanes through residential, it was more of a sign that was marked that this was a approved bicycle path instead of actually, extending streets and disenfranchising the actual residents. So it would probably be smarter to do that, knowing that they're known bicycle paths instead of actually causing, infractions on both businesses and on residents.
Thank you. Mr. Seaton.
Well, it is a common fact that with new construction, you can accommodate those bicycle and pedestrian pathways a lot easier than trying to retrofit the streets that we have in Cheyenne right now, specifically the Logan project, since I live up in that area right behind Cary Junior High. I don't see the necessity of making every street in Cheyenne have a designated bike or pedestrian pathway. The sidewalks for pedestrians are fine, but we just don't have the space with our streets. And to limit that type of construction and the business owners and the residents of that area and dictate to them that they have to give up that valuable real estate for a specific bike lane that's only going to be utilized 4 or 5 months out of the year at best in Wyoming with our weather, I think is kind of short-sighted. The new construction, sure, we can accommodate that, we can develop that, and that can be in the planning phase and developmental phase of that project to accommodate those pathways. But to go back and mandate or dictate that every street that has reconstruction done on it has to have a bike or pedestrian specified pathway, I don't agree with. And I think it's lacks common sense.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Roybal?
Well, and it's a lot of our streets in town, especially up in the avenues in there, they're not wide enough. No matter what you do, we could not accommodate it. Sometimes you can't even accommodate the car parked here, and one down the middle. So we're certainly not going to get a bike lane. I'm thinking that maybe we start, we have a greenway that circles the city. Maybe we start making dedicated accesses on and off of that. And when we start doing reconstruction on roads, say Snyder, we connect the greenway to that so you can get around town in a roundabout way. The other thing is education. You know, we set up what lanes you can be in, what streets you can be on, and just give that to the public. And that's what I got.
All right. Thank you. Any rebuttals on that question? Okay, we're going to go to some audience questions. And Mr. Johnson, I think you're first up on this question. If you all agree growth is an important issue, what would you do as a council member to spur growth?
Anything I can that doesn't break the law.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know if you really wanted me to elaborate, so I just gave you pretty much. Okay, that's my thought on it, so no, there's no elaboration.
All right, Mr. Seaton.
Well, I kind of agree that, you know, we ought to be open to every opportunity that there is as long as it doesn't break the law. I think we have a pretty good group of folks with the developmental council and going out and seeking those businesses. Like I said, I think Cheyenne does a pretty good job of offering amenities to people that want to live here and work here in this city and state. I mean, we have a beautiful city. I think we have the right amount of growth. We always need growth because that's what, the tax base is what provides for everybody in the city. So there are certain businesses I think that we need that if we're going to try and invite them into the community, there has to be a specific place for that type of business to go. There should be industrial parkways for industrial businesses. I think that's why it's critical to have the Planning and Development Office in the Cheyenne communicate, and it should be a way for the business owner to come in and get answers instead of being misdirected or redirected and not have a cohesive plan from the city of what's required to bring that business in. And I think that's one of the places the city council and the mayor really have to do a better job about that is opening those doors and consolidating those requirements and regulations.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Roybal?
I think that we need to look at all projects, corporations, small businesses, whatever that's coming to us. And I think instead of what I feel like right now is we have that's what you have, well, we'll get back to you on that. I want more of show us what you got, we'll build on that, let's get you here. Start helping them, start facilitating the growth of them, and start welcoming new corporations and new growth to our community.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
Well, I'd say probably three things. I think we should always be evaluating what our regulatory environment looks like and see where the bottlenecks are. I think we should be aggressive nationwide in advertising the things about Cheyenne that make it attractive. Low tax rate. Actually, I would say good weather, although I may get a couple chuckles out of that. I moved here because I liked the weather here. And then I think beyond that, I think we need to be forward-thinking in how housing is developed and integrated into our non-developed areas that bump up against the city that may be county now or maybe undeveloped areas, non-developed areas in the city, but also encouraging some urban downtown living. The city is only 26 square miles, and so we need to be looking at that area and how can we get housing in it, or do we need to expand the city to provide more housing? One of the things that's really, I think, maybe pushing back on growth right now is when people get here, they go, where do I live? We have about 700 net people, I think, driving back and forth between Colorado because when they get here, there's nowhere for them to live yet. And so we need to have a range of living opportunities, and we need to really be aggressive in integrating those opportunities into the city as it stands now. That's what I'd say.
All right. Thank you. This is the last individual question, and then we'll go into your closing statements. And Mr. Seaton, you would be first to answer this. How do you feel about unjust tickets like spitting on the sidewalk or swearing, etc.? These are enforced now.
Wow, unjust ticket. That just strikes me as inaccurate, because if an officer issues a citation, obviously he saw the infraction. I actually got cited for spitting on the sidewalk when I was in high school and didn't know that there was that statute until I got cited for it in the 11th grade. We have the ability to change those laws that are outdated and stuff, and I believe that's one of the, if it is a problem, then it needs to be put on the ballot and changed. I mean, we have that ability to change those laws. I don't necessarily think that spitting on the sidewalk or swearing in public is actually enforced quite a bit. I may be wrong about that, but I don't ever remember seeing an officer issue that citation when I was at the SO. Wow, that's odd. Well, anyway, that's the way I feel. We can change those if we have to. Anything that seems outdated, I think, can be brought into modern society and culture. But I really don't see those two things as an issue.
Thank you. Mr. Roybal?
Kind of the same thing. I've never had a ticket for spitting on the sidewalk or swearing in public, but I think I would have to sit down and listen to both sides of how that ticket got issued. Was it just because the officer was having a bad day, or the constituent was having a bad day, and they got to talking and it just didn't work out for either of them? But I think I'd have to sit down and talk to both of them before I can give you any kind of consensus on that.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
I guess I read that question a little differently. And instead of maybe unjust tickets, I think maybe the question might be, how do I feel about frivolous regulation? For instance, we do have an ordinance right now in the books that you're supposed to get if you have a bicycle in town, you have to get a permit for it. I think it costs $10 or $20 a year. And I think when that was originally passed, it was so that we could track down bicycles that were stolen or whatever. It's been on the books forever, never enforced, and probably unenforceable. And that's something that's pretty frivolous that should probably be getting rid of. A bigger issue for me personally, and there are going to be a lot of people that disagree with me on this, I think the cell phone regulation that we have, the handheld cell phone regulation that we have in town, is just something I personally don't agree with. I think that's something that's really unenforceable. It's just, I think we maybe write 100 tickets a year or so, but I don't. Ultimately, I think it causes people to look for policemen and take the phone away from their head, but I still see people using their phones, and I still see people texting and driving, which is against state law. Those aren't really unjust tickets, but the regulation there is frivolous in the fact that it's just really unenforceable. I think we should that our job isn't just as legislators just to make laws, but also to kind of comb through them and get rid of the ones that really don't work.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Well, if you add jaywalking to that list, I broke all 3 of those laws from my parking spot to the door of the courthouse. You can obviously see how I feel about it.
Okay, thank you. We'll start your closing statements. I'd like to thank you for your civil and thoughtful answers so far. This is your chance to leave a final impression on the people in the audience. And Mr. Roybal, you're first again.
Well, thank you. I did this job 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like I was effective. I felt like I had an open-door policy. I felt like I was respected, and I respected the people I worked with. I enjoyed it. I'd like to do it again, and I'd like you to vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
In my 4 years on council, I think I've fought tirelessly to give the people a voice in where their money's spent. That's really been a primary focus of one of the reasons I ran, and some of the things that I've done while I've been on council. And so while I have some vision, I also don't try to get too far ahead of myself until I have a plan to pay for it. My belief is that we should have the basics fully funded. Employee salaries, equipment, infrastructure, safety, police, fire, water, sewer, road, curb, and gutter. Once those things are taken care of, then we can move on to other things. Before we move on to implementing the next grand thing, that's what I've been successful in accomplishing in the last 4 years. I understand that my opponent would like to do it again, and I think he may have an opportunity to. But I don't think that that the voters in Ward 1 should vote for change just to hope for change. I think that we shouldn't lurch back and forth trying to make something happen. I think I have a proven track record that people can look at today in today's environment. What is happening today? Know that they have representation, that they will be respectfully listened to and represented, and I hope that I can get their vote again.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Well, the first thing, this is what I've said since I've put my name in the hat. If I'm not your candidate, by all means vote for James. If he's closer to your political ideals, I don't expect you to come forward and put my name on your ballot. You know, if he represents you, go with him. If I represent you, go with me. It's as simple as that. For Matt, I'd like to tell you that as far as voters, I'd like the voters to know I don't push Mongo. He will be the only one that knows what that even means. But really, that's what it comes down to. I did this because I thought I could do a good job. I've lived in this city. I travel around the world just like he does, except for not probably for the noble cause that he did it for. I just go because I think it's fun to see different people. But I have a good time coming back to Cheyenne. It's quiet. I like also noise. I wouldn't listen to the music I do if I didn't like noise. So I'm definitely for more people. Just like these guys have said, the more people we bring in, the more tax dollars we bring in, the more amenities that we can, start to build our community in better ways for sure. So that's my closing statement.
Thank you. Mr. Seaton.
Well, like most everybody up here, I think that everybody wants to do a good job, and they want to be able to provide that conduit for the constituents in their ward. And that's the same way I feel. I treat everybody with dignity and respect. I listen to ideas because I've learned throughout my life and the jobs that I've done and the place I've been that my way is not necessarily the right way for you or the next door neighbor. And you have to be open and approachable. That's the biggest thing that I think I could offer to the constituents in Ward 3 is that if you have a problem or you have an issue, I'm approachable. I don't just turn my back and walk away. I think that's what we're here. I think also that the City Council has to focus on what Mr. Allen said. We have to develop a prioritized list of what has to be accomplished in Cheyenne before we dedicate tax dollars to amenities that aren't necessarily what's right for the city for everybody that lives here or to provide a growth opportunity for businesses to come in. That's my primary issue, is to provide a stable and broad infrastructure to support the businesses and the residents that move into Cheyenne. And everybody has ideas that are valued, and I just want to make sure that they understand that if they vote for me and they have an issue and they want to talk to me, that I'm approachable. And I'll bring it forward and we can hash it out, and we'll find a consensus and the best way to go from there. Thank you.
Thank you all, not only for running and stepping up to public office and serving your constituents, but thank you for accepting our invitation to this forum tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too. You have your back foot on.
Do the introduction again because these are two separate segments. So again, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jan Cartwright with the the Cheyenne League of Women Voters. I've been a league member for about 15 years, and I'm a former past president. I want to talk just a minute about what the league does. We really support an informed voting public. We really feel that it's important to get candidates to talk about their views so that the voters can make their decisions based on that. We do not support any political party, and we do not support or oppose candidates for any office. We do support issues when the situation calls for it, but we do provide and work from facts, and we educate and we advocate for change. Tonight's forum is the second of 3. Last night we featured legislative candidates. Tonight we are focused on City Council and County Commission candidates. Tomorrow night at 5:30 we will host all 10 candidates for Laramie County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees. All candidates have also been offered the opportunity to post their written answers on our State League website, and that website is on the screen. A reminder to candidates, your answers are due to Sue Risky by this Friday, October 3rd, and you have her email address. The recordings of all the forums should be posted early next week on the same website, and we wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. We're also pleased to announce that voters will be able to hear most candidates for governor and superintendent on Thursday, October 23rd at 5:30 here in the Commission chambers. And now it's my happy duty to introduce Raylyn Jobe, who will be the moderator for tonight. Raylyn is a former Wyoming State Senator from Sweetwater County. She moved to Cheyenne in 2006, and since then she advocated for local government projects at the city and county level during her 12 years in the Senate. She is currently the Vice President of the John P. L. Bogan Foundation, whose mission it is to create or cause change primarily for the benefit of the people of the state of Wyoming through the support of science, education, and charity. And so, Raylyn, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. We're looking forward to a very informative meeting. We invited all candidates who are running for the county commissioner, and I'm glad that you are here to express your views to the public. Tonight, the procedure is that each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves and explain to the audience why you are running for a seat on the county commission. That's a 2-minute time frame. Candidates will then be asked a series of questions developed by the league. You will have 1.5 minutes to answer those. And then, as time allows, we'll have some questions from the audience. Again, 1.5 minutes to answer those. And you will have a closing statement for 2 minutes. During that time, we will give you an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal if somebody says something that you want to respond to. About the timing, I'd like to introduce Pat Hayes, who is our official timer, League of Women Voters member, and she will give you some warning signs to help you keep within the time frame. And that we would like to remind you to speak into the mic so that your voice does carry. And all the recordings will be posted next week. So any questions on the procedure or the timing or the format there? And I'll give you a heads up, there are already questions from the audience, so we'll have those later. Okay, the forum tonight is being streamed live, and the League of Women Voters is also preparing the voter's guide, which you've already heard about, with your answers, and those will be available on October 6th. And once again, we'd like to thank you for the use of the nice chambers that we have tonight. Okay, we will start with the opening remarks. Oh, before we go into that, Mr. Weiland is here for Ron Cayley, and he will be reading Ron's responses to the questions as they are written. He won't embellish and he won't do any of the rebuttals. And then later, when Mr. Cayley gets here, he will play musical chairs with you. Okay, are you ready? Yes. Okay, so we are into opening statements, and Mr. Hassenauer, would you like to lead off for us? 2 minutes.
Emily Hasenauer, like to thank the Women League of Voters for putting this forum on. It's my pleasure to always speak to the true bosses of Laramie County, and that is the voters and the taxpayers. And that was one reason I ran back in 2012. I ran as a citizen and a business owner, and I wanted to give them a voice in their community. And I had the common sense of over the last 2 years, if you made a campaign promise, I kept them. I'm the right age. I'm not too old or not too young. I'm 53 and I'm married, have 5 children, and tomorrow I will be 54. So Laramie County is very interesting. We have 2,700 square feet of land, and we have about 3 to 4 square feet of water. So sometimes the issues of water being enough for all the land mass we have, but there's 90,000 people that live in Laramie County. And I remember doing the petition work to change us from 3 to 5. And that's what got me involved a lot with local government. And I stood a lot of times outside in the cold weather to get that done. And the first thing I did as county commissioner over the last 2 years was protecting our First Amendment rights and our rights to petition our own government. So I proposed a resolution to do petition work inside so we could be treated like human beings and to fulfill the lowest form of government, and that is petition work. You know, I promote open meetings. I've had a lot of town halls. I protect mom and pop businesses. I have a burden to get rid of senseless regulations. We did a cell phone petition against that. Then we went and worked with a person, and my time's up, so we'll talk about that later.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. Appreciate the League of Women Voters allowing me to be here tonight and the work that you do to put this together. My name is Troy Thompson, running for re-election for Laramie County Commissioner. I was raised in Laramie County. My family moved here when I was 10 years old, graduated from Seton Catholic High School before it had closed. Went to Cornell University, got a degree in animal science, and then went to Washington State University, got my doctorate of veterinary medicine. At that time, I was blessed with the opportunity to come back to Laramie County, went to work at Avenues Pet Clinic, did that for a couple years, and then had the opportunity to buy Tri-State Veterinary Clinic, purchased that in '99. I've been a practicing veterinarian and a small business owner ever since. I did say that I am running for re-election. 4 years ago, I asked for support based on thoughts and ideas of where I thought Laramie County could go, and certainly was a humbling experience to receive that support. And running for re-election, this time not on ideas and thoughts, but on my experience and certainly on my voting record. And I think if you look at our voting record, you will see I'm the candidate and the commissioner that consistently votes in favor of private property rights, consistently votes in favor of the small businessman, and consistently votes in favor of economic development. Certainly the commissioner that is moving Laramie County forward. So would urge everybody, please look at our experience, look at our voting records, and please vote on November 4th. Remarkably important thing for us as people to get out and vote. So again, thanks to you, Raylyn. Thanks to League of Women Voters for allowing me to be here this evening.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us here this evening in order to speak to the public and also to speak to those here present. 2 years ago when I ran, it was based on the encouragement of others that thought I would be a good commissioner, and that encouragement has stayed intact and has continued to grow. And so I threw my hat in the ring again, made it through the primary. It's been a whole new experience going from the primary into the general. You kind of say, oh, now what? I've practiced the primary race. I guess you could say that as far as my experience here in Wyoming, I got here as fast as I could. The Air Force brought my husband and I here for a tour of duty at F.E. Warren, and when he retired, we got right back here. I grew up in western Nebraska, where it's not a whole lot different than it is here in southeastern Wyoming as far as the economy and the agriculture and the scenery and topography and all. So I feel right at home here. Excuse me. For the last 2 years, I've followed the commission board, and I've also been attending the town council meetings out in Albin, Pine Bluffs, and Burns. Carpenter is unincorporated. And I've kept up with the issues that they're dealing with and have learned a lot. It's kind of been a 2-year period of going to school, so to speak, in civics. It's been an in-depth study. I've learned a lot of the issues that are facing not only the county but also the state. I have a lot of experience in leadership. It's something that has followed me all my life. For some reason, I just keep falling into it, and a wide variety of experience as a small business owner. I would appreciate your consideration for Commissioner on November 4th and during the early voting that's going on right now.
Thank you. Mr. Weiland.
Well, thank
or
you.
Mr. Cayley.
On behalf of Mr. Cayley, I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. My name is Mike Weiland, and he called me about 5:30. He was busy with work in Fort Collins, and he should be here about 7 o'clock. I can't really speak for him too much right now. I've known Ron for several years now. He lives up the street from me. He's a hardworking guy. He's been a civil servant for about 35 years, I believe he said. And he's also, I know he's the owner, manager of the Cheyenne Grizzlies. So he did say, I wanted to pass along here that, he did decide to run because he believes the commission can use someone with scientific skills, works with regulators, a businessman, and like I said, he's a 35-year civil employee. So he can speak more on his own behalf here when he gets here. But I'm just happy to represent him, and thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll start into the series of questions developed by the League at this point, and again, you have 1.5 minutes for your response. Mr. Thompson, you'll be first up on the first question. What do you feel is the most important issue facing Laramie County, and how would you address it?
You know, if you look at what's going on in Laramie County, it's truly a remarkable time, and I think our greatest thing is also our biggest challenge, and that is to manage the growth and development that's taken place in Laramie County. You know, you look at the different business parks, the Niobrara Energy Park, Swan Ranch Industrial Park, North Range Business Park. We've even got our own Archer Complex development. You look at the development that's going on. We need to manage that development wisely. So how do we do that? You know, we do that with a good solid set of land use regulations, which we have, but you also have to have the ability to be flexible with those land use regulations. So you have to work this fine balance between protecting the rights of those current citizens that say, you know what, we like Laramie County the way it is. We don't want it to change. But by the same token, you've got this other fraction that says, you know what, we want to grow, and we want to grow in an intelligent manner. So you strike that balance with having land use regulations, and then also with having the flexibility to change those land use regulations and to work within those land use regulations. So you have good common sense development.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath?
I'm probably going to sound a little bit like I'm echoing Troy, but I do believe that one of the things that we need to be looking at, and that's a big challenge in Laramie County, is continuing the economic development that we have going on, but at a pace that we can adapt to. And we may not be able to control that, but I'd like to see us try. Part of that economic development is also keeping our fees and our land use regulations to a minimum, be able to welcome business rather than to put roadblocks in their way. Business brings economic development, it brings jobs, it brings families into our community. Yes, we have a diverse community right now. You have people who would like to see it stay the way that it is. But when you look out at the Swan Ranch and you look out east of Cheyenne where I live, there's a lot of oil going on out there. There's a lot of drilling, a lot of trucks, and they're burning up those roads fast and furious trying to make their deadlines. Change is happening, and it's going to be a challenge for the Commission to work within that window of opportunity for economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Weiland?
Okay, thank you. Could you repeat the question? I want to make sure I have the right one.
Yes. It's what do you feel is the most important issue facing Laramie County, and how would you address it?
Okay, thank you. I'll read Ron's response here, Mr. Cayley's response. The most important issue is revenue versus incoming dollars. We have a lot of projects, the Archer Complex, energy development, current budgets, employee raises, the library, and more, and critical funding that needs to occur in the next few years. We must proceed with the projects, but also must have the funds to finish these projects. I would look at grants, fifth and sixth penny monies, ask the employees where they would save money for raises, approach the private sector for gifts, and look at adjustments to the department fees through the Wyoming legislators.
Thank you. Mr. Hassenauer.
Yeah, growth and development and management of that definitely important, but not having too many regulations and not growing so fast that we don't protect our Western heritage. That we grow, but we grow on our terms with limited regulations and keeping our tax structures low, that it will attract outside businesses coming here. One of the biggest challenges will be the water in eastern Laramie County. State engineer says that the aquifers are dropping and 1/3 of the water needs to be cut back. We're having a meeting next week, Monday, in fact, with the state engineer and the farmers and ranchers and the landowners to see what we can do. The Laramie County controlled area, that's east of Orchard all the way to the state line, has made some proposals on what we can do, and we need to listen to the farmers and ranchers. The challenge is balancing what regulations we come up with and to a common sense answer or ideal so that we don't do so much to damage developers that are out there developing these homes. We don't want to make it so expensive that we don't want to make it affordable housing out in our county. And, you know, Mother Nature's good. It rains, it's good. It replenishes the aquifers, but then it tears up our roads. So they're both challenges.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second question, and Mrs. Heath, you'll be first on this one. What is the county's role on informing citizens of the impacts of natural resources development? This kind of matches your last answer. So.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that there's a lot of information out there that's available to the public if they'll just take the time to go look. You know, really, by statute, the commissioners have kind of their hands tied in some respects into what they can do as far as regulating energy development or dealing with water issues here in the county. The Oil and Gas Commission does all the permitting for the wells. About all the county can do is work with the energy companies as far as user agreements on the road, providing permits or obtaining permits from those companies for overweight loads, and giving them addresses so that our emergency responders can find them in case of a fire at an oil site, an injury while they're out in the field. The planning office has maps on their website that will allow you to find out where these permits are being let. You can find out which companies are drilling where, so you know which roads are being impacted. The planning office, like I said, or not the planning office, but Public Works works with the user agreements. The water rights all belong to the state. Overall, I think what the commissioners have done and should continue to do is to have a feeling of cooperation rather than trying to over-regulate the industries.
Thank you. Mr. Weiland?
Thank you. Mr. Kaler's response is, we have to be the guardians of the county. We must make sure that the resources are protected and we are informed of all activities that could affect those resources. We have to make sure testing and monitoring is being performed at a higher level than the state requires. Do background sampling of water and soils to make sure small impacts do not occur over large periods of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hasenauer?
Yeah, getting the information to the citizens and getting them involved, whether it's petition work or whether it's the impacts of an oil boom. We want to become energy independent as Americans as quick as we can with the limited regulations that we have to do and keep our citizens safe. We have an obligation to keep our citizens informed, and that is having an open, approachable elected board. This is a people's government, and I believe that's what it'll always be on my watch, getting the people involved in local government and keeping them informed the best we can, whether it's town hall meetings or whether it's at a public meeting where they can get a hold of, talk to us and tell us what the issues are so we know what they want. America was built on property rights, and I think that we need to protect property rights, and we need to work with the oil and gas industry and how they impact our roads, but we also need to be clear that they respect our property owners that are out there in eastern Laramie County and that's priority to this county commissioner to make sure their voices are heard too when we have this boom going on.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Raylene. When I took office 4 years ago, we were right at the beginning of what we thought was going to be this big oil boom. And at that time, the county commission sat down and we said, what can we do with this? And we had proposed requiring testing of water wells within a certain period of wells drilled, and we proposed some other things. And in that process, we heard back from the Wyoming Oil and Gas Commission, and they said, Laramie County, this is kind of our deal. Make sure you don't overstep your bounds. And so we are limited by what the state statute allows us to do. And certainly oil and gas development is under the purview of the Wyoming Oil and Gas Commission. And certainly the notification of neighbors, i.e. the citizens around the wells, is stipulated by the Oil and Gas Commission. So what can we do? I think Linda touched on this. What we do is we require them to come to our planning and development office and get an address for their wells. That allows, again, quick response for emergency personnel. Also allows us to look and say, okay, which roads are we going to be using, and come up with user agreements for those roads. So, and all of that, again, obviously open and available to public. Everything that we do is open and available. So, yeah, we're limited to what we can do, but we do what we can.
Thank you. I was very interested in those answers because I kind of live out in that area. Okay, we're going on to the next question, and Mr. Weiland, you would be up first for Mr. Cayley on this one. The County Commission has individuals with differing opinions. How will you work with others to effectively accomplish what you feel needs to be done? Is your approach to governance inflexible, or do you seek compromise and consensus?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cayley's response is, as a 35-year civil employee, I've been on both employee and management sides. Raised under a Democratic father and a Republican mother, I've seen both political sides, and running several businesses, I've been an employee and an owner and had to balance those issues. I can work with anyone that is interested in the good of the county and not their own agenda. I would be very flexible and always have an open mind. Compromise is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of knowledge and education. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hassenauer?
Yeah, you have to be flexible, and you have to put forth the research, and you have to talk to your constituents. You have to work as a team player. You got to follow state law, and it's important to get the voters and taxpayers' opinion on every issue. They're the bosses. They run this county. And if they want their elected officials to move in a certain direction, then it's up to the people. Getting back to the petition work, that we had a bill that we had to go across the aisle, Floyd Escobel, Democrat, to pass texting while driving, because I did the petition work against the cell phone issue. But the information I gained by the 3,500 signatures I took in 2 weeks, I was taking that information to the legislators, working both sides of the aisle, and we was able to and accomplish to get a law passed against texting while driving for public safety. There's an example of working across the aisle, and you always have to respect the other person's opinion. And over the last 2 years, tremendous effort's been made to do that. So that will continue if I'm reelected. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Thompson. I'm starting to lose my way here.
Thank you. I love the second part of that question. Is your approach to governance ideologically inflexible, or do you seek compromise and consensus? I would love to know who came up with that question. Anytime you have a group of individuals that are managing a company or a county or anything, trying to lead a group, you're going to have different ideas, different opinions, and it's crucial that you listen. And have the ability to think outside of your own thought process, and which I think is where that ideological inflexibility comes from. And certainly it can be frustrating on a commission or a council to have somebody with the ideological inflexibility. But again, the key is to work together, to listen, to talk, to express your ideas, and then to come to a compromise. And then, of course, there's always the agree to disagree. And, we've got Commissioner Holmes in the back of the room here, and, there's been a number of issues that he and I have a lot of heated discussions about. And certainly, again, you listen, come to a compromise, and then I think most importantly, you move forward. You move forward as a group, based on the decision that was made. And I guess I'll give a quick example. When we had the 6-penny ballot 2 years ago, I was against putting the fair project on the ballot because I didn't think we had to wait to pay for it. But I lost that vote 2-3, and from moving forward, I was in support of that because of, again, when we make a decision as a commission, we move forward together.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath?
Yeah, I think as an individual, we all have a core set of values and beliefs. And those beliefs and values are going to follow you wherever you go. But as a leader in government, you need to be able to listen. And sometimes my ideas may not be the best way to go, and I need to listen to the public. You could disagree, but you can agree to disagree, and you seek compromise and consensus. As commissioner, I would expect that with 5 on the board, there's going to be some healthy discussions on differences of opinions. But in the end, we need to come together and move forward.
Thank you. Next question. Mr. Hassenauer, you'll be first on this one. What is the balance between regulation and development, and how is Laramie County doing in striking that balance?
Sometimes we can quickly get out of balance with too many regulations in regard to housing development. The volumes of regulations sometimes, and they continue to grow. Higher fees sometimes are required. And this inhabit is not encouraging builders and home builders as well as it can discourage home builders. So as the Laramie County, though, I would say difference between city and county is we're more business friendly toward home builders and the development end of it coming into our county than possibly the city has. Recent meetings they've had with the Chamber of Commerce separating their development and planning. We have tried to put the right people on those boards. That's what we've done as Laramie County Commissioners, so that it's not disrupted, but it is working toward moving Laramie County forward as we see it. And the department was not scattered, but brought together so that it services the people of Laramie County. We can be proud as Commissioner putting the right people in place on those planning boards and stuff like that. So I think it's working very well that we are business friendly toward them.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. Balance between regulation and development. We touched on this a little bit earlier. You've got to have a set of regulations, a set of land use regulations to certainly protect private property rights of the individuals that are currently within Laramie County. By the same token, you want to be business friendly. You want to attract good quality, high-paying jobs, and you do that with being development friendly. Again, I think, you take an example of the Niobrara Energy Park. They asked me out there the other day, and they said, what do we do here for landscaping regulations? We've got this section here. Well, it's surrounded 4 sides by industrial areas. You've got the other side of the park that is next to the greenway. And certainly it makes sense to have the flexibility within your regulations to say, this area over here that's surrounded by industrial area doesn't need 50 trees. But the area that has the greenway going by certainly makes sense to have that landscaped and to kind of screen that from the folks that are using that greenway. So again, we've always been very business friendly in Laramie County, and we want to continue to be that way. But by the same token, we need to have a good, solid set of land use regulations.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath.
We will work to make your project work for you, and that has to be an attitude of our planning and development in Laramie County. It's easy to continue to add regulations, but it's harder to delete them. And I would agree with Troy when he was using the example of the Swan Ranch and the landscaping requirements. There are some projects out there that have a unique personality to them, and we need to be able to apply a common sense approach to our regulations and not have our regulations be set in stone so hard that we cannot be flexible. You know, I have talked to several of the contractors, and they're saying that there are counties and planning offices within the state that can turn around a permit in 24 hours. We've had some issues with that in our planning office, and I would like to look at those counties that are able to do that, find out what it is that they're doing that makes it feasible for them to do that, and maybe apply it here.
Thank you. Mr. Weiland?
Well, thank you. Mr. Cayley's response to this question is development is a must in any community. If you're not growing, you're dying. Most regulations are in place to protect the people, and some people might argue we don't want help, but they are usually the first to run to the government when they have a problem. That balance is very difficult, but I don't think there is one size fits all. The pros and cons must be weighed, and what's good for the county must be implemented.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, Mr. Thompson, you'll be first up. What role should the County Commission play in creating more and better paying jobs in Laramie County?
Creating jobs is economic development, and I think the County Commission needs to play a very intimate role in that. I think we need to be involved with Cheyenne Leads. We need to be involved with the Chamber of Commerce, and we need to not only be involved with them through our spot on their boards of directors, but also we need to be attentive to their needs. We need to listen. Those are the folks that have the pulse on the business community. I also think a very important part of this is the ability to work with the Wyoming Business Council and the State Loan and Investment Board. And the legislature has had these discussions. Do we supply grants? Do we allow grants to different entities, different businesses for infrastructure? They've had those arguments, and they've made those monies available to the counties. So it's my job as your representative in Laramie County to do what's right. And I think a big part of that is to, yes, take a forward stance on a Wyoming Business Council grant and work with these companies to bring them here to get their jobs, because the payback we get for the amount of money that our state is investing in those companies is in the form of high-paying jobs. It's in the form of property tax, and those grants pay for themselves quickly and over and over and over again when you look at the trickle-down effect of that.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath?
Yeah, the Commission's focus needs to be on keeping a climate that makes it easy for business to develop here in Laramie County. And I've mentioned earlier the land use regulations, the building regulations and such need to be kept within a reasonable range. I also think that we need to keep working with the Wyoming Business Council, as we are a statutory arm of the state. The Wyoming Business Council is part of our state development. Leads as a private organization here within Laramie County that has done some amazing work. The High Plains Economic Development District has also aided in development here with economic development. The governor, the legislature, anybody that's involved in helping make the climate in Wyoming and Laramie County a business-friendly climate, we need to be willing to work with them and to have a spirit of cooperation with them to encourage the continued development.
Thank you. Mr. Weiland?
Okay, thank you. This is Mr. Cayley's response. First, start with your own house. They have to get the county employees' wages and benefits in line with other county jobs in the region. The county employees are the backbone of Laramie County, and without good employees, the county would crumble. Then we must work with Leads and other organizations to attract the businesses that have the higher-end jobs. The energy play in Laramie County will help fund the future of Laramie County, and we must take some of the dollars that will start coming in and work with several organizations to make the community better and attract new businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hassenauer?
Yeah, thank you. We need to ensure an open and welcome environment. getting government out of the road, letting private sector come here with the businesses, let them create the higher paying jobs, not government. It's up to the private sector to do that. The county commissioners can work with the Business Council and the Chamber of Commerce and leads and keep fees and regulations low and get them out of the road so that these businesses want to come here and they want these opportunities that we all think is great here to live in Laramie County, and that is low tax structures and business-friendly atmosphere. And again, nobody's going to complain if we go energy independent and we have that oil boom. There's your higher paying jobs, and it also helps our state, our country, and our county.
All right. Thank you.
Raylene, could I be afforded the 30-second rebuttal?
Yes.
There would be one point that I would like to bring up, and that is when we have potential to bring in these businesses, like when Cheyenne Leads approaches Microsoft or a Walmart distribution center, we're in a competition with other states. With Microsoft, we were in a very tight competition with Texas, and Texas was offering them cash. Cash that we didn't have. Now, granted, we do have other things, lower tax structure. We've got the environment that works with cooling down those data centers. But it's crucial for us to be able to provide infrastructure because we are in competition with other states.
Thank you. Anybody else on a 30-second rebuttal?
I'd like to add that, thank you, Microsoft chose to come here because they can keep their computers cooler than anywhere else in the country. And, I don't think government had anything to do with that, but they've seen the benefit of that, lower cost to do that. Sometimes people would say by giving them the infrastructure, it is corporate welfare. And so we have to have a balance there. Do we listen to the will of the people and what they want, or do we bring in the big business for the big jobs?
Thank you. Okay, Mrs.
Raylene.
Heath? Yes.
May I?
Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind with economic development is we need to be a climate where we attract diverse jobs, whether they're high paying, whether they're medium range, and even the low paying. Our teenagers need to have starter jobs that they can learn the responsibilities of how to work so that they can eventually move into those mid-range and higher range jobs. I know right now that there are a lot of businesses out there that are looking for help. They cannot find people who are willing to work.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next question, and Mrs. Heath, you'll be the first one on this one. And I'm going a little out of order here. Should there be a code of ethics for public employees, including county commissioners and employees, to include guidelines for declaring a conflict of interest when their actions could directly benefit themselves or their immediate family?
The county has an employee handbook, and it's currently being updated, and I started reading it here just this week. You can have a code of ethics and require all your employees to read and sign it, but it goes back to the character of the employee, and the burden is on them to abide by that code of ethics and to treat others with respect, to have a respect for the position that they hold, the office that they are in, and to have a high character, a high set of values and standards to support the code of ethics that the county has. Signing it isn't the magic wand that's going to make people abide by it.
Thank you. Mr. Weiland for Mr. Cayley.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Cayley's response is, no, you shouldn't have or need a code of ethics to tell people how to act ethically or morally. We need to hire or vote in good people and remove them immediately if they don't have the ethics we all understand. A guideline might help an employee that's given a ball cap by a vendor. That can be accomplished with a quick note in an employee's manual. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hassenauer?
Yeah, it's a sort of a recent issue came up at the city council, that in their union, and such a requirement shouldn't be taken personal. If you want a code of ethics and you're going to push it down on your employees, you better involve your employees and tell them about it first and what direction you're going. And I would think that elected officials should lead by example. And I think good people are on the board, and I think you have to be a people person to do any kind of government work, or you wouldn't get the support to get elected. You have to show respect to the other person, whether they disagree with you or not, but show respect to all people in your constituents. When they call on a bad road, you better have the ethics there to say, we understand, and we're trying to do the best we can, and please have patience with it. We'll get to it as quick as we can. And show them ethics that you, as a people person, should do to handle any issue with the county, wherever you're at and whatever you're thinking. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you. Yes, I think there should be a code of ethics. I think we should all live by a code of ethics. I think we should all be honest and we should all be ethical. But we all know that's not the case. Certainly with employees, there's ways to deal with that. We've got in our handbook, we talk about nepotism. So you asked the question about immediate family. So there's ways to deal with that. There's supervisors, there's department heads. So no, I don't think there needs to be a written code of ethics for our county employees. I think elected officials are a little bit different. There is no supervisor, there is no department head, and I have seen in the past 2 years some real questionable ethics. I've seen an elected official secretly try to solicit the sale of his house to a gentleman from a company 2 months before we were to vote on a major grant award for that company. I've seen an elected official try to solicit a job within the county or for, again, another company that we regularly vote for grants. And quite frankly, I don't think signing a code of ethics would have made a difference in those situations, because I think if you're not an honest, ethical person, signing a piece of paper that requires you to be one isn't going to make a difference.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to some audience questions now. So, Mr. Weiland, Mr. Cayley's not here yet, right?
Right.
Okay. So I guess these would go to the other three, since you
Certainly.
don't have a written response
Certainly.
from him. I'm sorry, I thought maybe he would be here by now. Okay, so Mr. Hassenauer, you would probably be first up. These are audience questions. How do the candidates feel about the $300,000 water study that supports the further idea that we need to regulate water, seize property, and implement a $5,000 meter fee?
And I asked the state engineer this question, and he about fell off his chair. I said, did your $300,000 study lower or raise the aquifer 1 inch? And, sometimes just because we spend $300,000 on a study and geologists are involved, we can't ignore the findings that they come up with. But they tested during some fairly dry conditions. They stopped testing last July, a year ago, July. And we've had 9 inches of rain in September. We've had 135% snowpack. And we've had a very wet cycle year coming up, devastating the roads in Laramie County. So sometimes you cannot have just a study to override common sense. You have to let sometimes Mother Nature and God, who's in control, take care of the replenishing of the aquifers, along with not doing so many regulations. Sometimes geologist studies, or EPA, they have an agenda too. And sometimes you can have a study done and counter and punch holes in those geological studies if you could afford the $300,000 to do it on your own. I know some home builders have water people that work beside them on their development, and they're not thinking that this aquifer Ocala can't support the housing development that we have in Laramie County.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
I believe we, state engineer, again, water in Laramie County, water in the state is under the purview of the state engineer's office. I believe we've had a control area in Laramie County since 1971. During that time, we've had wet periods, we've had dry periods, but overall, the aquifer is declining. So you take all that information from the past 43 years, and what you do with this study is you assimilate that information, and then you put that into a model to try to look forward and predict. And that's what that study was about. And I'm a scientist. I'm a doctor, and my mind works with science. And so I like having the data. I like having the ability to see this model and to see what's going on. The situation that we're in now and the meeting that we're going to have on Monday has to do with the fact that we know the aquifer is declining. We can prove that the aquifer is declining. But the question is, what do we do about that? And the state engineer has very limited potential to do anything other than allow or deny permits. But what he does have the ability to do is take a recommended approach for water management from the end users, i.e. the irrigators, the home builders, and that's what we're talking about on Monday, is getting all of these groups in the same room and working together to come up with a plan that everybody can agree with, that the state engineer can work with. That's what that meeting is about. It's not about, there's been one study that's been proposed, and the goal is to get everybody on the same page and move forward together with something that everybody can live with.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath?
Just as Troy was saying, the water study is a collection of facts. I'd like to use the analogy of a stock tank. Most people that are familiar with stock tanks know that the pipe generally comes out of the bottom if you're going to drain it. What we have here is an issue of that pipe in the bottom of the tank being an unknown size, but we know that the water level in that tank is declining, and we're not replenishing that water level as fast as what the water is going out. Now, how do we adjust the flow of the water? That's the big question. How do we conserve our water? That's the big question. What is going to happen at the meeting on Monday? And I'm assuming that we're going to get a representation of all of the water users that are dealing with this issue, and we can get them to the table and speak to each other about their concerns and not just have a one-sided discussion. This needs to be a discussion by the users, by the people that are being affected, and it's going to affect everybody in Laramie County regardless of whether you are residential or whether you are agricultural.
I'm going to ask one of you to give the details of when and where that meeting is so that our public, if they're interested, could also attend.
It'll be Monday here, state engineer and the landowners, public's invited, 4 o'clock to 5.
All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Hasenauer, you were first on that one. So, Mr. Thompson, you would be first on this question. If the county were to experience an oil boom, what infrastructure improvements are necessary?
Roads. Roads.
And roads.
And roads. Obviously, I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's when. I think it's coming. It seems to feel that way. And obviously, the biggest impact is on the roads. So how do we deal with that? How do we manage that? And certainly, with an oil boom comes income, but you don't see that income for quite a while, and certainly don't have it up front, so you can prepare the roads for that. So what do? We have user agreements with the oil companies, try to get them to help us with the maintenance of the roads. We did that with Campstool Road. One of the oil companies put in about $400,000, the other put in $700,000, so we got $1.1 million to help with Campstool Road. We need to stay on top of that, and we need to stay on top of those companies, continue to have those user agreements, and continue to work together with them. Then you've got the whole other realm of roughnecks and people coming in, and it's a different type of population, a different type of crowd, and so you've got to have the sheriff's department ready for that. But there again, it's a challenge because you don't see the income from this boom in time to hire extra deputies. So you work with what you have, and you work with again, a limited number of sheriff's force, but you do the best job you can, and you try to stay in front of the curve on that.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath?
Roads, infrastructure, including law enforcement, our emergency responders, these are all going to be impacted. Our schools will even be impacted, so there needs to be some cooperation with our school districts as well. A lot of the people that are coming into work in the oil fields are bringing their families in, and they may only be here for a short term, but it's impacting our rural schools out in District 2. We've got a lot of different personalities in those kids. We've got a lot of different experiences. Social services is going to be impacted. It's going to be an infrastructure nightmare to some degree. And yes, the money will come in as far as the mineral severance taxes and the sales tax and everything that will come into the county, but some of it's going to be a lot slower than other dollars, and we need to be very prudent with how we spend those dollars in order to support our infrastructure.
Thank you. Mr. Hassenauer?
Yeah, the oil and gas industry, you got to look at these people being professionals. You know, and sometimes, whoa, this oil boom's coming, and you try to get ahead of it. These people know what they're doing, or they wouldn't be here, because there's oil underneath the ground. The fracking company, Univar, came here. I was very interested to go out there and check with them. And what's in fracking? 98.5% is natural water. And they went to this green chemical that goes down to do our fracking, so these wells can be brought up to production a whole lot quicker. And they didn't come here because we're not going to see an oil boom. It's going to be right around the corner. Right now, we did have a great public works guy that worked with the oil industry and gas to help with our roads. When there was an issue there, they'd actually go repair them as long as the public works director said so. There's nothing really set in stone that they take care of the roads, but these guys are professionals. We want them to be here. We want them to become energy independent. We want them to produce the oil to have the high-paying jobs that's going to come. So you have to be friendly toward them and not run them off, but you have to be also conscious of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and try to stay ahead of it, especially on our roads. Thank you.
Thank you. We have more questions from the audience. I don't know, how long do you want me to go here? One more? Okay, we'll go with one more question from the audience. Mrs. Heath, this will be up to you to answer first. Seems like a pretty straightforward question. Will the rec center be on the ballot soon?
I wouldn't be a bit surprised that you'll probably be hearing something about the rec center. It's one of those issues that's kind of touchy. We do have a lot of people that are moving into Cheyenne and Laramie County that really do desire the rec center. Is it something that we need to support to the scale that it has been proposed in the past? You know, I think that was one of the reasons that we had the defeat 2 years ago on the rec center and also the Archer complex. And you look at some of the other projects that were voted down on the sixth penny, in that total dollar at the bottom is what really bothered a lot of the voters, and they said, no, we don't want to spend that kind of money. We don't want to commit right now to that kind of money. So will the rec center be on the ballot? My guess is it will probably come up again as a possibility, but how soon, I wouldn't predict.
Thank you. Mr. Hassenauer?
You know, these are six-penny sales tax projects, and I think sometimes the problem is we put too many projects on the ballot. I think there was $140 million worth of projects the last ballot. 2 of them were voted down, but 90-some thousand was still passed. We're some 2 or 3 years out before we get them paid up or paid for, so there's not going to be anything coming on the ballot for a long time. A lot of times I think these are not needs but wants, and we're putting them on the backs of the taxpayers, which I'm against. I think 2 times, 3 times you try it, I think you should move in a different direction. I think a lot of people would like to see the fair move out to Archer. I'd like to see it done through private sector and not always be put on the backs of the taxpayer. I think private sector doing the naming rights, seeing what other kind of funding we can come up with. Some of these big companies moving here would donate some funds for them naming rights, would help us a bunch. So not against, I'm against putting everything on the ballot. Well, no, I want the people to decide it on the ballot, and when they decide it, then it's up to the commissioners to build it and get the most bang for the buck if they do decide it. So I think a rec center at this point, I think the people would reject that again.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
I think the quote of the evening is Linda's when she said it was a bit touchy. I wondered if running for re-election was an exercise in futility. I was on the committee that put together the six-penny ballot, and I had so many people call me that said, if you allow this to be on the ballot, we will make sure you do not get reelected. And I would hang up the phone, and the next person would be for the rec center, and they would say, we have enough people that want this on the ballot that if it's not on the ballot, you will not be reelected. So I think my chances of getting reelected are slim to none, but I'm going through the process anyway because I enjoy it. Yeah, it's a bit touchy. You know, our sales tax collections, we approved that ballot 2 years ago, and our collections are greater than what they thought they would be. And when we as a committee sat down and looked at the numbers, we had hoped to get about $1.5 million per month collecting on the six-penny tax, and we've consistently been above that since we started collecting. So realistically, in the spring of 2017, we're going to start talking about another six-penny ballot. And please don't quote me on that date because who knows where the collection will be, but that's right around the corner, certainly within my next term. I'm not certain that I'm going to be dumb enough to be on the committee again, but we will be talking about that. We will be doing it, and I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want that on the ballot.
Thank you. I'm going to make a couple of comments here, and then Mr. Weiland, I'm going to have you lead off on the closing statements for Mr. Cayley, just to give you a minute to find the right stuff. Thank you very much for your informative answers tonight. I found it very interesting, and as a recovering politician, there were several times I wanted to engage with you, but I knew Sue would get after me if I did that. So we will move on to the your closing statements, and I thank you for showing up tonight, and I also thank you for running for public office. Let me see. Mr. Weiland, you get to go first.
Okay. I was hoping that Mr. Cayley would be here in time, you know. But I guess I will continue to fill in for him. I think that Mr. Cayley has some good different viewpoints on things, different perspectives, some good ideas. He suggested he wanted people to look at his website, which is roncaleyforcommissioner.com, to mention that, to get things that I'm not saying properly, you know, for him. But I have known him for a while, and I think he would make a fine commissioner, good addition to the county commission group. He wants to be sure that everybody knows that he will represent everyone in the county, not just one or another party. He's in it really to help the people in the county to make it a better place. He doesn't, necessarily need the job, he says, and things like that. He wants to actually to really help and get everybody's ideas. So I would recommend visiting his website because I'm not explaining things very well, I'm sure, and I know he wishes he could be here, and so hopefully I know you can call him or visit his website. He would fill you in more if you have any questions about him.
Thank you, and thank you for being here for him tonight. Mr. Hassenauer.
Yeah, I ran as a citizen, ran as a businessman. I'm not a computer. I'm not a machine. I am very compassionate about Laramie County. When people ask me for help, hey, I'm willing to help them. And I've went out of my way to try to make myself available to everybody in Laramie County that want to contact me. We found a real good charity to give to, and that's Pay It Forward, and that helps the people that are, poor and had cancer. And I made that promise to give back the money, and I did so, and I kept my promises to Laramie County. If I've made a mistake, I've tried to make up for it. If I've had a conflict of interest, I've stepped off of this diocese. I have a 100% record being here to vote on the issues that matter to Laramie County. I've put a full-time effort into it. I will continue to do so to represent us folks that think that sometimes other commissioners don't listen. I think sometimes it's unethical when we point a finger to the public and say, how dare you come to our meetings and challenge our decisions. That should never be done by any official. You're the bosses. We work for you. We make ourselves available to you, and we represent you, the people, because this is a government for the people and by the people. We follow the Constitution, and we follow the black letter of the law, and you go to church and you pray that God helps you each and every day, that's what makes you a good county commissioner and an ethical person. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Intelligent, rational decisions based on honest family values. That was my brother-in-law came up with that campaign slogan 4 years ago, and we used it then, and we're using it again this time around. Intelligent, rational decisions based on honest family values. And I would like to think that that is not just a campaign slogan for me, but that would exemplify how I've been in office. There's been a lot of tough issues that have come before us in Laramie County in the past 4 years. And there's been some times when I didn't know, how to think, what to do, and gathering information, talking to people. There's been issues where I even spoke with parish priest. Hey, give me your advice on how I vote on this issue. So yeah, I think if you look at that, intelligent and rational, certainly we're fulfilling that, and based on honest family values. I'm married to a gal from Pine Bluffs. She was one of 10 kids. I was one of 5 kids, and we've got 8 kids together. So certainly not short on the family value part of that as well. But bottom line, I really have enjoyed working for Laramie County. I've really enjoyed representing the people of Laramie County, and I would ask that you give me a chance to do it for another 4 years. It has been a very enjoyable, very educational experience. So I would ask for your vote on November 4th. I would also like to thank you again, Raylyn, and the League of Women Voters. I know it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to put these candidate forums on, and you've done them not just for our race and city council race, but for all of the races for both the primary and the general. And so my hat is off to you guys for all of your hard work. And Susan, thanks to you as well. So with that, again, please vote on November 4th, and please consider voting for Troy Thompson for Laramie County Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Heath, you get to wind it up.
What an honor. Of like to thank the League of Women Voters again for their forum here tonight to allow us to speak to the public. One of the questions that came up earlier was talking about a code of ethics. One of the things that I feel strongly about is how a commissioner, how an elected official conducts themselves while in office. The state here a few years ago adopted the Code of the West, the cowboy ethics, and that's one of the things that I look at quite frequently and remind myself of. This is how you should treat other people. This is how you should conduct yourself in office. If I am elected, you, the voters, have given me a responsibility not only to enforce the statutes of the state of Wyoming, but also to listen to you and to be respectful to you and to my fellow commissioners, fellow elected officials, regardless of where they are in the state, and the employees of Laramie County in particular. That's something that means an awful lot to me. It's a huge responsibility, and I take it very seriously. I look forward to speaking with more of you between now and November 4th. I'll engage with you tonight, Raylyn. I'd love to talk to you some more. It's an important decision that we've got before us this year in our election, and it's not just here in Laramie County. It's statewide, and it's on the national level. We cannot forget how important it is for the citizens to be engaged in the political process.
Thank you very much for the civil discussion tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Any closing words, Jan or Sue? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.